What's up, everybody? It's time for the Vegas Nation off-season series. We're extending this video series with Heidi, Fang here, Sam Gordon. We're going to break down everything by position group as we see things happen with the Raiders, as we have a very short offseason, actually, with April 4th being the day that they get back into the building, and maybe we start seeing some practices and workouts with the new coaches. Sam, first of all, today we're going to talk about the defensive line. We're going to get into what's going on with Max Crosby's contract, and we're also going to break down some of the numbers. But what do you see right now happening when it comes to Max Crosby and what could become of his contract here in the future?
Yeah, Heidi. Well, first and foremost, I think it's pretty obvious, right? Max Crosby has outplayed his fourth-round price tag. At this point, he's coming off of an excellent third year in which he led the NFL in pass rush win rate, 27%, that according to Pro Football Focus, best among pass rushers that played at least 300 pass rush snaps. So with that in mind, we understand kind of how disruptive of a player he was. The 8 sacks, not necessarily indicative, not necessarily reflective of his impact on that defense. So overall, you're talking about one of the most productive defensive lineman, not necessarily most productive, but most disruptive defensive lineman in the NFL. Certainly that's how he played last year. Of course, now would be the ideal time. This offseason would be an ideal time for the Raiders to get that contract extension done, because if he's even more productive this season, it would only get more expensive for the Raiders. So when those talks do ramp up, I would expect to see something certainly in excess of $100 million. Pro Football Focus currently projecting 5 years, $136.25 million. So that's $27.25 million a year. Seems like a big number, but when you take a look at the market with how elite pass rushers and elite defensive linemen are paid, it would fall right in line with some of the other figures you're seeing around the NFL.
It's a little bit interesting when it comes to Patrick Graham as a defensive coordinator, because you don't know if he's going to go 4-3, 3-4. These are things that we're going to look at as we start to examine what could happen down the line here with the entire defensive line group. Sam, when you look at what Yannick Ngakoue does well, how do you see him fitting into this system?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just a pass rusher, right? That's what he does. You take a look at his statistics, how consistent he's been. One of the most consistent pass rushers in the NFL since he entered the league. At least 8 sacks in all 6 of his NFL seasons and 10 this past season. So, regardless of what kind of scheme Yannick Ngakoue plays in this year, I think you can expect similar production, right? Again, the 10 sacks last year, he of course I think has thrived in the 4-3 defense, like kind of the best spot for him. But what's on Patrick Graham is to figure out how to best utilize the personnel you have. He utilized multiple fronts in New York, and I would expect that he would do the same. It's just kind of about figuring out your personnel. I think for Yannick Ngakoue, of course, he signed that 2-year deal last offseason, so he's going to be playing for a contract extension as well. If he has a big year, he's still only 26, 27 years old, would be eligible for a larger long-term deal. So we'll have to see how he plays. But yeah, I think definitely depending on that scheme, what kind of role he's playing could impact his production. Either way, you would expect some consistency given the way he's produced the last 6 years.
When it comes into the defensive line, a lot of people are talking about how Patrick Graham likes a big-bodied nose tackle. Is there anybody that may stand out to you in the existing defensive tackle spot that might be able to work out well in this system?
If you talk about if there's anybody on the team already or anybody that we saw last season that I think that you think would fit that role, it would have to be, I think, Jonathan Hankins, just based on his size. Based on kind of his production, how valuable he is against the run. His pass rushing isn't necessarily his thing. He didn't have a sack last year, but he's a run stuffer in that middle. He knows how to command double teams and how to control things at the line of scrimmage. So whether it's a traditional nose tackle or whether they do stick with the 4-3 and you're playing with 2 defensive tackles, I think it's important to have depth either way. So I would expect the Raiders to canvass the market and look to retain some of the guys they had playing for them last year.
Overall, when you look at the defensive line group, like what do you think as they move into this next era with the new coaching staff? Like how many of them do you really expect to be retained, and based off just of the numbers of what you saw last year?
Yeah, Heidi, that's again another tremendous question. I think it all kind of depends on how money is moved around elsewhere, right? We're expecting a salary cap jump, $182 million last year up to $208 million, so that's going to organically, naturally create some more cap space. But there's also, like we talked about, guys with extensions due, free agents, other areas of need where you're going to have to allocate those resources. So I'm not expecting the Raiders to retain every free agent defensive tackle they had. I think that would be a tall task, but I think it'd be wise to prioritize, Solomon Thomas. I think certainly played really well in the role he was in last year, when he was impact player, and same with Quentin Jefferson. So if you're able to bring those guys back regardless of what scheme you play, I think you'd be in good standing. But yeah, that to me, Heidi, when you talk about what keyed the playoff run last year and what keyed those wins at the end of the season, it was the fact that the Raiders were able to pressure the quarterback and were effective against the run in spots where they had to be. So again, crucial that they fortify the depth across the defensive line and address that this offseason.
Well, there you have it from Sam Gordon. You can catch him on Twitter at @BySamGordon. Sam, thanks for the review here on the defensive line that exists as we know it right now for the Raiders. Of course, we'll keep you updated with all that happens on VegasNation.com. For Sam Gordon, I'm Heidi Fang. Thank you for watching.